I've been feeling overwhelmed and burnout lately, and I know I need rest. But when I try to take a break or have a slow morning, I feel guilty, unproductive, or like I'm being lazy. I'm stuck in this loop where I crave rest, but can't fully let myself have it. How do I actually allow myself to rest without spiraling into shame?
This one is so good, and I feel like we could do a full episode on this one. I feel like there's, again, so many complexities here, but when you're feeling like so overwhelmed and burnt out and you want to rest, but your body feels like it can't rest, there can be some of the like social conditioning around the like rest represents in your life. And sometimes that can be you're lazy, you're unworthy, you're not being productive, and all your value is in what you're producing. Sometimes, from like a nervous system standpoint, rest can feel so uncomfortable because you're finally like still enough to feel all the discomfort and the emotional experience that you're having. Your body can feel like really buzzy and energized. And so it feels like so hard to even sit still. And so that I think can be a big component, and maybe even sometimes like not even knowing how to rest, like what feels restful for you, what feels replenishing. So maybe your idea of rest is to just like sit there and take a nap or to sit there and meditate, and those things like don't actually feel good for you, but maybe going for a walk feels restful, or I don't know, making yourself a cup of tea and journaling or reading a book. So like finding what actually feels restful and replenishing can also sometimes be helpful, because you're going in a direction that doesn't actually feel good for you. So those are kind of the initial thoughts that come to mind.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like, the moment of like when you sit down sometimes, especially if you're like wound up really tight or if you have a lot of like dysregulation in your nervous system, or even like if your mind is really busy, the sitting still can just like it either hits you like a ton of bricks or like the fatigue just like sets in.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think touching, like you touched on so many important things. And like you said, we could honestly do like a whole episode on this concept, this topic, because this is like such a problem in our culture. Um, like, and controversial, I'm going to say it, American culture is like 100% like really in hustle culture, and like productivity is like a big part of how we define ourselves.
Yeah.
And as someone who has traveled a lot and spent a lot of time in different countries, this is not the standard elsewhere. This is the standard here. Um, and to really like shine a light on how important rest is and like how important it is to actually allow yourself, because we're going to go back to that phrase. I've said it once, I will say it again.
Mhm.
You cannot pour from an empty cup. So if you are depleted and if you need to rest, like at the end of the day, really examining, I think, what the story is around why rest is, and if you're not watching, I'm using air quotes, but bad, like,
Mhm.
because it's not bad, right? It's essential to replenishing you that capacity. And also like, you know, one thing that was coming to mind when you were talking, Kayla, is this concept of like our worth existing outside of ourselves and like hustling for our worthiness outside of just the fact that we like exist. So if it's coming down to that, like the guilt or the unproductiveness or like that story, getting curious on like maybe where this story started, or like where the seeds of the story were planted, and like is this your story or is this someone else's that you're carrying? Because I think that that's such a thing too, is maybe at a point in your life you may have valued rest a lot,
Mhm.
or like, when we're teenagers and we like need to sleep or like have a lazy day, like we do it, no questions asked. But somewhere along the line that changes, that shifts because of whatever story or whoever is projecting that onto us. Um, and kind of examining, like, is this actually mine? Is this story actually mine? Or is it, um, is it something I've picked up and I'm carrying that's like become part of the I guess the external, like, what am I doing this for approval? Am I doing this because I want to seem productive to others? Because at the end of the day, right, like if I know I don't have the capacity or I'm burnt out and I'm still pushing that, what's that? Is that actually productive even? Like, am I actually producing something of quality? Am I like showing up with capacity? And um, am I actually like putting my all into something or like the energy that I want to? Or am I just like, I have to do this? So, like, when you're running on E, is that really the energy you want going into whatever it is you're doing anyway? I don't even care if it's like cleaning your house or like, whatever. Because when you like are in an inspired place of like, oh, I really like want to get this organized versus like I have to do this, they each have very different qualities. So
Yeah. And I think too, when you're like, there are seasons of life or just like little things that come up throughout the week or day to day where it's like, yeah, you might be a little more, tired, but this thing has to get done. But if this is like your standard state of operating in your life, of you're doing almost everything from a state of depletion, from a state of exhaustion and overwhelm and feeling burnt out, I think it's worth evaluating, what are the things that are maybe contributing to you feeling so burnt out and exhausted all the time. I don't know if we've covered in an episode yet, but the concept of like what drains you versus what feels replenishing or what feels like a gain for you.
yeah.
And so that can be really helpful to kind of evaluate, what are the things that are creating such a drain in my life, in my day-to-day life. Am I able to get rid of some of those things, delegate some of those things, make them slightly better, so that they don't feel as draining for me? And how can I, increase the things that are replenishing for me, that actually feel good for me and that allow me to feel, re-energized and full of vitality so that I can actually tend to the things in my life and so that I can feel well enough to seek rest and to really like lean into that and be still enough for that. I was also thinking, I don't know if this person, if Jessica has kids or not, but I think sometimes that can almost be like a motivating factor to like demonstrate what adequate rest looks like for the sake of children, like for the sake of people you're raising. And also, I mean, even for like adults in life as well, to be able to demonstrate like I know how to balance, productivity and doing things and getting things done, because that's of course valuable. We need that in life, but we don't need to do it where we're like running ourselves into the ground every day. So there's a balance there. And I think sometimes other people can be motivating to, find ways to create a greater balance.